I would like to bring up a former colleague who is also a wonderful, wonderful principal back in the, not too far distant in the past, right? Was the principal of Central High School. Here's a very interesting thing. Both the mayor and this young lady were both principals of Central High Schools, of one of the phenomenal high schools here in Newark. And so I'd like to bring her up to say a few words because she knows the mayor, I think, knows a lot about him in terms of a lot of the things that he's done here in Newark. And so I'm going to bring her up to say a few words about the mayor, and then we're going to have our Mr. Baraka.
Good morning, and thank you, Eastside. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Dr. Charnay Brown. I represent the Office of Comprehensive Community Education, and the Mayor's Book Club is a phenomenal initiative started by the mayor in 2019 to make sure that he impacts literacy in this great city of Newark and ensure that everyone is not only just reading and because they should, but reading relevant material that impacts, that's meaningful, that's life-changing and transforming. So I'm so excited to be the Chief Education Officer and work for the Mayor, Raz Baraka, who is an educator by trade. He spent about 20 years in education, and he also was the principal of Central, and he loves this time spending it with you. So I want to thank you, young people, and thank Eastside, and I want to acknowledge the superintendent and Dr. Ortiz for allowing us to come in here, and thank you guys for welcoming us. And I bring to you none other than our great literate mayor, Mayor Raz Baraka.
How's everybody doing? You good? So you actually started reading the book, right? So we could get right into it, right? I actually enjoy this book. You know, it's like a movie to me. So, you know, I don't know where you guys are in the book. So I'm just going to start from, you know, just the abstract kind of concept from the very beginning, you know, just to find out what you know about the Great Migration period. Like, I know the book is trying to give us another understanding or perspective of what the Great Migration was. Have you ever heard of the Great Migration before this book? You have, good, and your teachers are doing a good job a little bit here, you know? So, did you find out anything different about the migration by reading this than you didn't already know? Or what was that? Anything new that you found out about what happened in the Great Migration? Yes.
That also that the people that went to the north, because they went to the north, they made many people that we don't forget.
They left people behind, you said?
No,
I can't hear you.
yeah, you have to.
Pull it down.
Because they went to the north, we got to meet the famous people that we know today, like Michael Jackson.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else? Go ahead.
We ended up learning about like the tragedies leading up to the Great Migration, like exactly why the black people, why they wanted to move to different parts of the country. The book did a good job explaining like the tragedies committed against the black community and what ended up leading up to the Great Migration.
What basically led to it, right? Yes.
Just to add on to what James was saying, like, it was so amazing to see, like, the different reasons why people decided to migrate, because it wasn't just one thing, it was multiple things that led up to them deciding to walk or drive to different states, something that they had no idea how it would be, and if it would be better. Obviously, they knew it would be somewhat better, but they didn't know how, to what extent it would be.
What are some of the things that made people want to leave?
The Jim Crow laws and the various uses, racial discrimination of black and brown people in the South. I was going to say but I don't know. The African Americans had to deal with a lot of violent, aggressive behavior from white people, and back then it was considered a norm, and they took a risk and came to the North in hopes of living a better life, not knowing whether or not that was true. And to hear like different stories on people and what they went through to be able to earn their freedom, it was eye-opening.
So it's just two pieces there. I want to jump on. Does anybody want to say anything else to that though before I go forward? Yes.
I would like to add on, not only were they like facing racial discrimination, but also they were forced to work a lot for like minimum wage or low wages, and they weren't able to really support their family without having to do like a ton of work.
Absolutely. And sometimes they weren't even sure if they were going to get paid at all, right? So two things there I think I want to talk about. One, just, and we talked about it with the kids from our side, just the power of leaving. I do want to talk a little bit about that. Just getting up and leaving and going to some place that you absolutely have no idea what's going to happen or who's there, what's going on there. I mean, and I'm sure many of us can relate to that and hear in many different perspectives, in many different ways, just families have just getting up and going to a whole new place that they know nothing about, right? What kind of power you think that gives you to get up and leave a place, I mean, like that? Yep.
I think for Black people at that time, it was more so the first time that they had a choice in where they had to go, because of the amount of, like, for as long as they knew, slavery was so present in America, and for the first time they had a chance to move by themselves, and they chose where to go to, because it wasn't like someone put a gun to their head and said, go there.
Right.
They did that by themselves because they knew it would be better. I think that was amazing.
Well, how do you know about these places? If you lived in Mississippi all your life, how do you know what New York is? Or Chicago? Or Detroit? How do you even know where you're going?
You don't?
Outsiders.
Huh?
Outsiders.
Outsiders, okay.
Media, like back then, like maybe radio shows or like old TV stations.
Magazines.
Yeah.
Magazines, journals. People talking, you know. You know, when people come back, they tell them the streets are paved with gold, right? Everything is happening in New York, you know. Everything is happening in Chicago. It's the bomb. You got to go up there. It's better than here. It just excites people's, you know, imagination about what's happening over there. And any place could be better than here, right? In their mind. There were some leaders who didn't want them to leave the South and do that. No. Why do you think that that's the case? That people thought that they should not leave. Their local leadership, priests, reverends, thought that they should stay there. Frederick Douglass was one of those people. Yeah.
They were profiting off of them.
Huh?
They were profiting off of them, so they still got like their money and stuff like that. So they made more money off of them.
Okay, so some of them definitely, yes.
Some people just thought that it would get better quicker.
Okay, but they thought it would get better quicker. Why would they think that?
Honestly, I don't know. That's just...
I would say tradition, because most African Americans at this time didn't know about their backgrounds in terms of which in terms of which countries they came from in Africa, and because like they built up this culture during like slavery, they got to make music, they got to make food. Like a lot of them were oracles, and they told stories like through slavery. And because the culture was so hot there, like people would rather stay where the tradition is hot than like pave themselves in places that they don't know about.
Well, so Frederick Douglass was like an abolitionist, right? He ran away from slavery himself and became an orator and a speaker and spoke out against slavery. He was one of the people who actually advocated for African Americans to stay in the South and fight, right? So can you see his perspective, or you think that that's just completely silly?
Yeah, you can, in a way, because not only is it, you know, like she said, they built so much there, and it was like, why would we leave when we could fight back?
You're giving up a lot, right?
Right.
You're giving up a lot. You left everything you owned back there, by the way, right? Just got up and left. You just got up. Everybody, we out, right? A whole bunch of people. The other part I want to talk about is what she said, Jim Crow, right? What is Jim Crow?
It was basically it was a time period where black people were, you know, told that they were less than white people, separated. They didn't have as much rights, and they weren't equal to white people.
There were laws
put in
Laws.
place that basically separated the saying equal but separate.
Right. Do we remember some of the Jim Crow laws? Because they were different in different towns, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Some of them were a white person couldn't marry a black person.
Right.
There was no access to, I believe, public education.
Right.
There was many more, but
Yep, just a few. Go ahead.
They were separated in like modes of transportation, like trains. You have to sit in different places, buses, restaurants, marriage. They weren't allowed to marry. Black people weren't allowed to marry white people.
Yep. There was one town that said you couldn't even play checkers with black people. I mean, that's pretty bizarre. Anything else? Any wildest ones you can think of? Yeah.
there were laws that prohibited people from like swimming or enjoying like regular day activities. I remember seeing pictures of white men pouring acid in pools where black people would try to swim with white people to get them out.
It's crazy. Go ahead.
It was also looked down upon for like a black person to engage a handshake with a white person.
Yeah.
Like if the only way you'd be able to shake a hand with a white person is if they engaged first.
Right.
Otherwise you'd be punished.
Right. I saw a hand over here. No? Go ahead.
I saw that there was in a courtroom, there was a black Bible and there was a white Bible. So
Yeah.
you, let's say a white person was in court, they had a specific Bible that they were allowed to, swear the oath on, and then a black person had a different Bible, so you couldn't even touch the same.
Couldn't touch the
Couldn't
same
even
Bible.
touch the same things. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though it said the same thing, hopefully inside of them, right? What about when you walking on a sidewalk? Could you walk on the same sidewalks together?
No. Another one that I found like very interesting was that, I mean, they still happen today, like sundown towns here in America. Basically, they're towns or cities.
Go ahead.
Basically, they're town or cities where after a certain amount of time, like black people couldn't stay there because white people or any other type of person would be able to commit like crimes against black people.
Right. Like curfews and vagrancy laws. Right. You know what the vagrancy laws were? That were also came out at the same time as Jim Crow. They had vagrancy laws. Well, if they caught you not working, so if you were in your house on Saturday, like you couldn't be in your house on Saturday, they come get you. You're supposed to be in the field. You're not in the field. You're in the house on Saturday. They can come and arrest you because you're not working, right? No soccer, no baseball, no basketball. You're doing that during work time, and you don't. So if you don't have a job, if you're unemployed, then you go to jail. So that's those kind of vagrancy laws that existed. I mean, what do you think had to be people's mindset to create laws like this?
I think it was the idea that black people weren't equal, and although there was laws that made it seem like they were equal, it was just laws, and for individual people, they still thought that black people were dirty, they weren't smart, they weren't, because for 400 years they were enslaved and their parents didn't get education, so it doesn't make sense, but it kind of does, and like their logic.
Well, we're talking about the early 1900s now here, so I just want to keep that in perspective as well. Yes?
I just think it's this whole idea, like the whole ideology of segregated but equal is just completely messed up, because it's like a bandage on an entire social issue that no one can really resolve. So they thought that like by segregating them, they will have their like own equality, but all that does is raise racism, because there's more like mysteries between each other, and if you don't come to understand each other, and that just raises racism even more. They just made the entire problem worse. Segregation is never the way to go. That really just raised racism.
I agree with him. Another thing that might have caused people to do that is because when there are generations and generations of things put in your head, and no one's telling you, hey, this is not how it's gonna be. This is how you think, and that's what happened to most white people. They weren't taught about, equality and stuff like that. Their parents were telling them, oh, you don't speak to them, we don't do that. and now we have white people with that kind of mentality and control and power of what happens to people, and then we end up with segregation.
Well, if you bring a baby to a lynching, you bring a child to a lynching, what do you think is going to, with a whole bunch of other people there, like there's a soccer game, they all at watching somebody be lynched? I mean, what do you think is going to, the kind of psyche is in a child's head as they get older, you know, when they grow up in an environment like that?
The child is gonna be like, they're gonna think that it's normal. Basically, like, racism, it's taught. Like, nobody's born racist. It's something that you're taught. It's really ingrained in environments, especially in the South, like, because that's where a lot of slavery happened. And I would say, like, most people, they agree with segregation and, like, that power, because it's an issue with superiority and that hunger for power. Because there was slavery and a lot of people were able to abuse and treat black people like animals, they had that power and they profited like a lot of money from that. And then when you have laws like the Emancipation Proclamation and laws that are finally like realizing that black people are humans and not cattle that you use to like grow your crops and like pick your cotton, they're defeated, and they're like, oh, I no longer have that power, like these people are free. So when you create segregation laws, it's like, oh, I still have that power, but it's hidden.
Right. Well, that's right, but it ain't too much hidden though, right? I mean, because it's happening right in front of you. It's still going on. So, and you can see it, right? So you guys read about Plessy versus Ferguson in there, right?
Yes.
The court case?
Yes.
That's great. I didn't really learn too much about Plessy versus Ferguson until I went to college. So you guys in high school, it's great that you know the Plessy case. I don't know if the book went into detail of what that was, but I heard you say, one of you guys over there say something about the separate but equal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the basis of that, right? Separate but equal. Anybody remember anything about that?
I do.
Yes.
The Plessy versus Ferguson case was when the all-white Supreme Court ruled that segregation didn't violate the 14th Amendment. And it just comes to show how the government had so much impact on racism, and that it wasn't just, oh, it's just white people. No, like, as adding on to what she said about how racism is taught, like, it just comes to show that the government is what started this all. If there was no government, then makes you think, like, would this racism be so prominent? Would it be this strong? Would white people, it just makes you wonder so many questions, and this Plessy versus Ferguson case just really comes to show how the government had such a big impact on it.
Sure. Yes.
It just brings up Malcolm X's idea of white being a status, and it being like this capitalistic idea that the common people have to like take out this white, which is the 1%ers and stuff, and that these like capitalistic 1%ers are the ones that like they influence all this racism and stuff.
I understand what you're saying. Keep talking. Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, so the force behind what was happening was able to happen because of Plessy versus Ferguson. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That it legitimized and legalized the kind of segregation that was happening in the South, right? Plessy versus Ferguson. It's a case you probably should remember, that's for sure. And as you read more, you get to understand deeply how it impacted all of the relationships that's talked about. And I want to talk about three things before we close this down. One of them is trauma, right? I want to talk a little bit about trauma. We know what trauma is, right?
Yes.
Trauma. We experience a lot of trauma here, a lot of trauma. We in Newark try to make us create a trauma-informed city. We try to make sure that, folks are trained in trauma identification and trauma care, because we know we've been through a lot of trauma. How traumatic has that situation have to have been for African Americans at that time? How traumatic? Can you imagine the trauma that they went through at that time? And then having to leave and coming thousands of miles north, not knowing what's going on, that also adds to trauma. What are some of the things that you read or heard about in the book that you identify immediately as these are traumatic responses to the things that have been going on in these people's lives?
It was one thing that I read about when one of the people who migrated that she wrote about, when she said she tried to attempt his journey, his migration, and how he was driving with no sleep, no stop, no rest. And I'm like, that has to be dramatic. I mean, not dramatic.
Yeah, I get it. Dramatic too.
Right, well, yeah, that too, but it has to be excruciating because
Yeah.
I can't even keep my eyes open for 24 hours.
Yeah.
So imagine having to drive on a road with other people, constantly on the lookout to make sure you don't get arrested or something bad might happen to you on your way to only God knows where.
We said stories of, in the South, they used to pack food in a shoebox, like put chicken and bread and stuff like that on traveling because we couldn't stop. You couldn't stop at the corner store or stop at the bar or stop at the saloon on the way up because God knows if you go in that place, you might not come out of there. So you had to take everything you needed with you on the trip. Go ahead.
Also the fact that they have to leave everything behind, as you said, but they have to leave their entire family behind too. Because I heard that only younger people could go because they were the only ones that could, I guess, make the trip. And also how they couldn't contact their families at all. There were no telephones, there were no radio. There was radio, but
No cell phone.
No cell phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say like a trauma response to what was happening in the South is a lot of parents not allowing their children to go out with people that they don't know.
That's right.
And a big case here in America is like the Emmett Till case.
Right.
How his mother allowed him to go out. I'm not sure like what he went out to do, but a lot of parents now are cautious because with the Emmett Till case, it was basically about a 14-year-old boy who was out like in the South, like doing things, normal things that boys do. And he was accused of like whistling and catcalling a white woman, and then 3 grown men, like white grown men, they beat him up to a pulp, and basically he was like disfigured. You couldn't even identify him, and he was like drowned too.
That's right.
So when they found him, they couldn't even identify him. And like a lot of people of color, like their parents, they don't allow them to go out because of that fear, and that trauma stays in them.
Sure. There's instances in a book where they were talking about how parents discipline their children very harshly. Did you see that? Did you read that part of it? They would discipline their children very, very harshly. And it talked about it a little bit. And I thought that was a traumatic response to what was going on. Do anybody remember that? Remember that part of it? Well, let me just suggest it to you, and then maybe you can add on. The fact that they were saying, because when children did something wrong, they beat them ferociously, like they punished them and beat them. And they made an analogy to the sense that they would beat them the same way the overseer or white folks would beat them, because they knew that the things that they were doing could end up in their death. What do you think that does to the children, though, who were being beaten that way? So maybe you go to the store and you do something what a child does. You whistle at a white lady, or you pick something up that you don't supposed to pick up and you put it in your pocket, right? Or you touch something that you're not supposed to touch. Some of this is, we still feel this today, You can't run around the mall like certain other kids. Your mother snatch you up, you run around the mall, damn near choke you to death, right? You can't, that ain't yours, put it down, But what do you think that does to children, though?
I think it causes resentment to everybody around them, not only the parents, but the white people who have their parents have this much fear to cause them to beat them. And what I mean is that, like, if it wasn't for the white people to get so angry, their parents wouldn't beat them that badly. And I feel like the kind of beating that they got is an example of, like, the trauma that is throughout the years. I know so many black kids still get beat to this day, and it's bad, and it's still like a cause of slavery. I think that's the most disgusting thing, that is still prevalent. nowadays.
Do you think it creates anger in young people?
Yes.
I think it does because it feels like everybody's against you when
Right.
you know, like your parents are just hitting you and not telling you this is why you're doing this wrong, this is why you're in trouble. They just hit you,
Right.
and you never feel like you get an answer because they don't explain to you. It's just like because this is the way it is.
Because this is the way it is. That's deep. You hit it. One and then two. Go ahead.
So I was gonna say, like, it creates like a normalization of abuse disguised as discipline. Like, although like a quick little slap to like the wrist might tell you like stop, but when it gets to the point where you're hitting kids with a belt, like you're whipping them just like slavery, it's abuse. And then when you normalize it and little kids see that every single day, they're gonna grow up thinking like, oh, I have to discipline my children like this. And this might be like out of topic, but a huge percentage of like serial killers, a lot of them turn out the way they are because a lot of them were abused and they were hit and they were mistreated and neglected by their parents, and they thought that that abuse was love and like hard love.
Go ahead.
I totally agree. That's actually all I was gonna say. But something else it does is that, like she said, it causes anger and it causes more problems. So they think like this is what I think. I think that some parents believe that, you know, disciplining my child with a belt or something like that is gonna get it through their mind, like not to do this, not to do that. But at the end of the day, we're kids, and you know, we make mistakes and we do things over and over and over. But if it's not really harming nobody, beatings are really like beyond terrible, because like
Right.
when you imagine you do something, you're young and you know, but it's not something really bad. You get a whip for it. You know how much anger and problems are gonna put like a strain on the relationship between you and whoever beat you, because it's like, wow, you really just did all that, and now I'm left with bruises because I'm out here living life being a teenager.
Right. This is hundreds of years later. This stuff still happens, right? So just the generational transfer of trauma, you know, is deep. Go ahead.
I think that it causes them to act out more, and then it just becomes, the cycle just keeps continuing on, and it just never stops. And also, what he said about how it causes them, like serial killers, like they just repeat, so it just, the cycle, like you can see that the cycle just keeps going on and on.
I just wanted to continue like talking about what they were saying. I feel like nowadays you can even see grown adults, grown black adults, like you know, like say, oh, this is okay. We're not being two, and we turn out fine.
Right.
But we know it's not. Like
Right.
even
And they probably not fine either.
Exactly. Like they still have trauma to think about, and it's because of the generation of trauma actually. Like if you talk to if they were to talk to their parents, be like, oh, this is okay. And those parents would talk to them, their parents, and they probably were dead. Be like, this is okay because we got beat too. But we don't see the problem with this. This starts with slavery. This starts with segregation, and it's terrible. And even myself, I feel like the idea that beating someone until they are bruised or bleeding, that should never be counted as discipline, but abuse and some kind of really horrible abuse that we never really talk about as Black people.
Right. Yes.
I absolutely agree with everyone here. What I've said, talking about like how this discipline / basically abuse towards children is basically creates this anger as well. But not only that, but throughout the book, it showed how it makes them be more aware of like how the real world is.
Right.
There's a quote specifically she says from Ida May, I believe that's her name. She says, she seemed to be more aware of how life was harder now. Things that wouldn't have paid attention to before, she seemed to be noticing. That was basically how she wasn't able to pronounce the word Philadelphia, and how her teacher started to like whipping her, and the fact that she didn't have a father, that made it even worse. To say just because she doesn't have a father, he goes on to just whip her, and when she states that, he doesn't whip her ever again.
The last part I want to deal with in terms of trauma is the kind of relationships that people had in those communities, in segregated communities, the relationships people had with one another. How did all of what was going on affect relationships between folks there in those communities? Between black people that lived together in those communities, how did it affect their relationship with one another?
I think it affected them as everybody has different opinions, and like we were talking about, like some people decided to stay, some people decided to go when migrating, and it just causes the difference between anger and disacceptance. Because while some people, while they were kids, got beaten and they were angry, some just accepted that. So we can see that in different communities, you could see the resentment toward everybody around them. You can see the resentment that nobody can expect. In some people's eyes, it was just like, am I the only one who can see this is wrong? But for others, it was just like, oh, this is how the world is. This is how we're going to be treated, and we can do nothing about it.
So I think the relationship there was both positive and negative, because what would happen is that the black community, they would try to, they had each other's backs. Like they tried to prevent white people from, white individuals from catching, or basically no one wanted to tell on anyone else.
Right.
Everyone was safe with each other, everyone trusted each other. But then you also have the other side where people will actually snitch on one another, and that would ruin their relationships with each other. So it's kind of a thing where it's like, these good things are coming out of it, but on the other side, we have these terrible things that are happening.
Right.
I totally agree with his point about, because it most definitely made the black community come together and be stronger. And after that, that's when we started having more like leaders step up and want to take control, just like prove the fact that we deserve better and we shouldn't be treated like that. We shouldn't have to be ran out of our own home because we deserve rights.
There's always beauty in the midst of trauma, because although these people were being persecuted, chased down, killed, and mistreated, like a lot of black people, they were coming together in terms of communities and loving each other because they weren't loved by races outside of their own. And like even now, like a lot of black people, including myself, like even with people that I don't know, like I call them cousin, I call them aunt, like we're so close. Like we built a family together even though we're not blood related. And because of this, like they were put into communities where you would think that they would fail, but no, like they built the things that they had, like the creation of cookouts, being together in communities like Soul Train and underground clubs where you could create like jazz music, any type of music, tap dancing, like I'm not sure what it's called, but like stepping. Like a lot of that was created in black neighborhoods because instead of thinking about the trauma and letting white people get them and tell them that they're not worth it, they were creating a bunch of things that they profit off of. And like a lot of art, like Alvin Ailey, they were able to create those beautiful things because they were separated from people.
So I'm gonna give you an assignment before, because I want to move on to something else. Go ahead, I'm not your teacher, but I'm gonna give you an assignment anyway.
Okay. Like just what Sky is saying, like for me, as a black person, like when I see someone like Sky, I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Like all throughout the halls when I see her, I say hi, say hi to each other, and I feel like it makes us closer. And it's so nice to have people be like, oh, this is how I feel. This is like I have like my isolation problem in the school or something like that.
Right.
This is a school that is mainly Hispanic, but like, and I'm from Brooklyn, and I feel like when I used to be in a mainly black school, I like used to be around everybody, and that was really close. I used to be close to so many people, and I used to have like those connections, and now being around a community that has like black people, it's so cool to see the connections that we can grow closer together.
So we talk about that a lot now, like we always say magic or black girl magic and all this other kind of stuff we talk about, right? But these are things that really disguise the trauma that we experience in, right? So, and all the stuff you're saying is absolutely true. But I want you to take a look in the book, right, this time, and look for the social relationships that people have with one another that were affected by Jim Crow, the competition that it created amongst one another, the resentment that you raised just want you to, I don't want to get into it now, but I want you to really, when you look in the book, I want you to find instances of that, right? And make a connection between, you know, well, how that affected relationships then and how it affects relationships now. Like how that trauma traveled through generations, just like the beating with belts, whips to belts, how that, you know, there's a time when we used to brag about my mother, comedians say my mother would go out and get the biggest whip and pull the strings off the whip and come in the house and whip me with the whip. The extension cord, all this stuff, right? We make jokes about it, but it's really not a joke, right? It's really just trauma passed on from generation to generation. So I just want us to pay attention to that here when you're reading. I want you to pay attention to that a little bit, right? And identify it and just make a connection between some of those things that are happening then, that happen now, so we could break those cycles, right? So we can break those cycles. I do want to ask a question about, you know, just the migration from the South. How is that in any way similar to immigration, right? How is that similar to immigration? How is migrating from the South, families leaving from the South, similar to people leaving countries and coming here?
My family is from Trinidad and Jamaica, so I'm first generation American. And the difference between like the similarities is that it's a choice, but it's also like, I can always hear my aunt and my mother being like, I wish I could go back to Trinidad and I wish I could go back, but Trinidad and Tobago isn't as good over there. Like it's a nice island, it's really beautiful, but it's also not as wealthy as America. And so we have to look at the choices and why, the benefits that you get from migrating or immigrating.
Anybody else?
It's very understandable because I'm also first generation too. My parents are from West Coast Africa, Cape Verde, and they both came here when they were very young, and they didn't have anybody here. Like they came on a plane to a country that they had always heard of on TV or friends talking about it, and they're like, oh, this is a country where we're gonna be able to make a lot of money, we'll provide for our children. Like I'm very grateful for them, me and my 4 siblings. Like we all have a great life, we go to great schools, and my older siblings, they're very accomplished because of our parents. And my parents have told me various times, like it was very difficult for them because English not being your first language, it's very, very hard to like assimilate to American culture, especially when you want to get jobs here. Like how are you supposed to work with people that you don't understand? So although it is difficult, it is understandable because you don't want to stay in a country where you don't get paid as much, and you want to provide for people for the future. My parents are from Brazil, and they came here around 20 years ago, and they always tell me, like till today, they still tell me how like traumatic their journey was coming here, how when they got here, they had nothing. They were living with people who they barely knew, left all their family behind, could barely get into contact because they couldn't afford to pay a phone bill. They couldn't afford to pay 25 cents at a payphone. They couldn't afford to get in contact with other people. And to think how they started off so small and they built themselves up in order to have a better life, because just adding on to what she said, back in Brazil, it was poverty. My parents grew up with little to nothing. They didn't have money for a backpack. They didn't have, they had to carry their books around. They didn't even have money for books. And so to think that they came all this way to have a better life, to escape from that harsh reality that they started off from nothing, and now I'm able to attend to school. I have all of these great things, and how the people in the South, they were looking for that. They needed to find a place where they felt that they belonged, that they had the right to freedom, that they were going to be able to grow and be better in life. And so it really makes me think about my family as well, and how they experienced something not as traumatic, but something traumatic that will forever leave a mark on them.
Absolutely. Over here.
My parents are also from Brazil. They grew up with a lot of poverty. There in Brazil, the economy is horrible. And I want to say that the same, basically, because both black people, they moved from south to the north because of horrible conditions in the south, and people who immigrate, they move to other countries because of the horrible conditions in their country.
100%. You wanted to say something? No? Okay. I'm just trying to make you say something. Go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up a character from the book called Robert Joseph.
Yeah.
He's like the migration was kind of like a reset for him.
Right.
The like he's very passionate about pursuing this this doctor career and stuff, and he works under Dr. Beck, and he goes to this family, his husband and wife, and he's able to do the checkup on the husband, but the wife just completely like he doesn't want his service, and it demotivates him. But the way he gets his money is that he has to get this urine sample, and he forgets it from the husband, so he has to go back into this house full of like I wouldn't like racism, to get back this this thing for money, because he's really passionate about the job, and this the migration kind of, like the reset, it kind of like it deteriorates your passion in a way, and you really need the desire and the push to continue to do what you want to do. And I think Robert Joseph just like shows that. And I'm also like a first American here. My parents came from Portugal, and Robert Joseph kind of like, I see my parents in him in a way, because they had a push to get that like their passions out. They had to go through school and stuff, only knowing Portuguese and stuff.
Right.
They had to learn English.
Right.
And it was just like really tough. But the desire to be more, to actually take the opportunities that you moved there to get to, even though there's all this discrimination, is like it's what makes it worth it. Even you know, if you have to struggle.
No, I get it. Anybody else? How about any of you people who haven't said anything yet? Y'all have nothing to say? 1, 2, 3. My man right here, you anything, nothing?
I also wanted to add a little bit more to what I said before.
Right.
They really have to take a risk in order to make this trip.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yep, you have to take a risk. They had to take a big risk. What's the risk that they took? What risk is it to leave Portugal, to leave Brazil, to leave Cape Verde, to leave, you know, wherever you're from, to come here? What risk are you taking?
They're coming here from people from the south are coming to the north without knowing what's happening here or if it's anything better. Like I know in the book, Robert was saying that he's from California off of rumors that everything was good over here, like in California.
That's right.
And he didn't actually know if it was true or not. Like he was leaving the south just to get away, because he heard everything was better, so he was hoping everything was better. So that's like a risk he's taking.
Let's stay there. So he heard everything was better. People who left Portugal, Brazil, all those places, they came to the United States. Why? Somebody told them it was good here. What was going on?
So for my family, they heard like the U.S. there's more opportunities, and you know before they had me and my older brother, they just like wanted them to like they just wanted to have a better life in America. So then they just like came here, and they had to like leave their families and like communities and like just like take a big leap and like see if their future will succeed.
Then, go ahead, but keep this in mind. This is next. I want you to talk. But then you get here, and all of the things that people told you it's not. Then what? Go ahead.
You would say like you failed at life, because a lot of people like they would rather stay in the countries that they come from because they had a comfortable life, like they're happy, and then they come to a country that they don't know. And another risk factor of like coming to a place where you're not so familiar of is like loss of culture, language, and many different things that make you who you are. Like I know a lot of people who are first generation, second generation, third generation who don't even know how to speak like the language of their parents.
Wow. Yep.
And that's like a big risk to take, because in order to like preserve your culture and stuff, like you need to learn recipes, you need to learn your language to say that you're an American, but you have something with you that you can identify, like another country that you're from. So that's like a big risk factor. And also not seeing parents. Like my parents, like they hadn't seen their parents, like my grandparents, for 5 years. Like it's been 5 years since we went to Cape Verde, and that's a very big risk because they have to take care of me and my little brother, and they can't have that time to go visit their parents to spend time with them.
I just wanted to add that I feel like a big risk included is the risk of losing yourself. And what I mean by that is
That's big. That's good. Right.
what I mean by that is my parents have been here, like I mentioned before, for over 20 years, and so like you just hear them, oh, I forgot this word in my language, like they don't remember it, and it's because my parents aren't able to afford a ticket to go to Brazil, which is over $1,000 every year to go visit their family. They lose their culture, they lose what they're familiar with, what they grew up with. They lose that piece of their self that they'll probably never be able to gain back. And I think that adds just, kind of an upsetting factor to leaving their country, and it just like adds on to the trauma of just, realizing that part of you is gonna be forgotten, and just, you've lost it. It's not there anymore.
That's heavy. That's heavy. That's a whole discussion, a whole meeting by itself. Yes. Don't forget what happens when it ain't what they said it was, because that's what I'm gonna ask you next. Go ahead.
For me, my aunt and my family came around 20 years ago, and when I was growing up, I just felt so disconnected from my culture because my mother never really talked about it, and I never really got to understanding their stories and why they wanted them. So for an English assignment, my English teacher asked me to ask my aunt, why did she come? And I started off by saying, I don't really know. It never felt like my story. It never felt like my culture. Because they never really go to Trinidad, and they never really talk about their families. And when they do, it's always about how annoying they are, they're just not great people. And so for me, it was always about being disconnected from my culture and never feeling like my culture was mine, even though it is, and I can't take it part of me. So
that means you got some work to do.
It's I just for me personally, I just never felt taxed because of the feeling of them not really remembering and them not really wanting to talk about it.
Right.
And then, I still enjoy cultural food, like roti and stuff like that, but
I like roti too.
Exactly that. But still, it's just really, but the good thing about my family is that my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, are in Florida. So my aunt can go travel there because she's kind of sick, and my grandfather and my grandmother are kind of sick. They don't really travel, but they do talk daily. And that's the good part about having some of your family in America.
Yeah. So, Ida Mae Gladney, and I started with our time with this one. Ida Mae Gladney, when they first talked about her, they go visit her in Chicago, or was it Chicago she's in? Yeah, she's on a porch. And at the stoop of her porch, there's a whole bunch of guys hanging out there that she describes them as drug dealers. That's how she describes them. And she lives in probably the south side of Chicago, poverty, all kinds of other things going on, and just imagine the stuff, even if you think about Newark and places and things that are going on, that she traveled all the way from the south, looking for streets that were paved with gold, to find herself in situations that are difficult still, in some instances, more difficult, right? So what do you think that does to her, right? Her mindset, her thinking, and why don't you just get back up and go back south?
I think it would be a huge disappointment, and it would make you feel like you wasted time, energy, all of that to get to a place where you thought was gonna be paved with gold, and then you get here and it's just well, this is my life now. And then it's was it worth it? Me leaving and putting myself through so much to try to make myself better, and I end up here. It was just it would be so I don't know. Somebody said earlier, it would feel like you fail, and you don't know where to go from here.
So all of these parents who did this that we talked about, right? A lot of their hope and their dreams and what would make them believe that their travels was worth it.
Their children succeeding. Like, although my parents weren't able to get the jobs of their dreams, them seeing me going to like college preparatory classes, me being like in AP classes, they see that it all works out. I'm currently like a junior, and every time like I get good grades, or I tell them that I'm getting letters from colleges, or I'm preparing to take my SAT and stuff, my parents get proud, and it shows that that hard work that they did to come here and start a new life, like it paid off.
Like she said, with grades and all that, I think my parents never had the opportunity to go to college. So knowing that I'm gonna be the first person in my family to attend college, I know that to them it's gonna be like, I made it. Like, I went through this journey, I did all this, I went through all the struggles, and now my child is gonna have a better life. She's gonna be able to, prosper and have all these good opportunities coming, because back in Brazil, I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't be able to be living the life that I am right now. I wouldn't be a straight A student. I would, not have the same opportunities as I do here. And so although that they weren't able to go, like, get what they wanted, I know that they're happy that I am, and that it was all worth it in the end.
I guess something different about my story, or like my mom's story, or family story. So my mom has a college degree, and she has a good paying job. Like she's doing well, but like what Sky is saying, like I'm in so many clubs, and like I'm in sport too. So like her seeing that, she's proud of me. She's glad that I have almost all B's and like a lot of A's. And for her, it's like, oh, this is what's happening. This is why me and my sister came to America. So our children could have a better life, and could be in a better surrounding. They're not filled with the kind of bad, well, not bad, but like not great growing up that they had.
Right.
So, because Trinidad is like really beachy and like has a lot of trees and stuff like that, so it's not that great.
Yes.
I just wanted to talk about how, like, the reason why a lot of people move, it's like they want to escape this fate, like, I don't know, an arranged marriage or a job they have to work till they die that they don't want to do. People want this freedom of choice. They want to escape this fate and like decide for themselves. And sometimes, or all the times, it's just this knowledge. You have to gather this education. You have to know things so you can choose. But some people, they don't get this education. They don't get the knowledge to choose what they want to do. So they get stuck in this like this fate in a way, and they're just fated to do something they don't want to do. It's this like these social norms, these like cultural norms that gets people stuck. And you have to surround yourself with a bunch of different like cultures, and like you have to learn about them. You have to know all the opportunities and what like people are doing. Else you're just not gonna know how to travel through life.
Right. It kind of destroys your imagination.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I believe that they made it illegal for people to learn, right? Because what do you think that would do to folks who learned? I mean, there were instances in the book where a guy knew how to count, and they had to get him out of the South because he told the guy he was cheating his mom, right? I mean, how does education empower you like that?
Okay, so I'm gonna be 100% honest, because I'm a teenager, and sometimes now we look at school as if it's like a bad thing. It's like we really don't want to go because we may be learning stuff, but we could learn more elsewhere. But knowledge is actually power. And I used to hear the saying and be like, oh, okay. But when you get older and you realize that when you go to school and you pay attention and you're out in the real world and you actually get to use what you know, you hold a lot of power with that.
Right.
Because you can go anywhere, and without having gone to school, like someone can tell you have to pay this much and then keep most of your money and you not know because you didn't count. but when you count, you realize, and it also open up more opportunities for you to like better yourself.
I want to, what's your name, sir?
My name?
Yeah.
Brian.
Brian. I want to stay with Brian for a minute. This idea that, I mean, the thing that you hit on, which is to me very powerful. So if the folks in the South did not know that there was a North, they didn't know Chicago existed or Detroit existed or New York existed, how would that affect what they did, you know, in terms of like this whole migration thing, if they didn't know those places existed, or if her mom in Cape Verde didn't know there was a United States that she could go to.
Like she was saying about how they explained it better than how it was. It's like they'd be stuck with these social norms because people are afraid of the unknown. They wouldn't like go somewhere. Like, if we didn't know the entire like European continent like exist, we wouldn't really like. It really takes this drive to like venture out. So less people would move.
Right.
And they'd be like faded with this like just to be controlled by other people. Like you don't know what you don't know. If people don't tell you, you're gonna be stuck.
100%. You basically stuck. So when you get this information that there's something else going on, what does it do for your imagination?
It makes it go wild. You actually you get more creative. You get like dreams basically. Like in my class, we touched a lot about the American dream in my AP English class, and how a lot of people, they get influenced. They're basically lied to because of their status and how it doesn't really apply to them and stuff. And it like people aren't allowed to dream sometimes when they're like really they don't have the status for it and they don't have the knowledge for it, that people don't provide for them. That really just gets people stuck. So
Go ahead.
Do about that.
Itching to say something, and over here, go ahead. And then we gotta wind up.
As for the question about what the South would do if they didn't know anything about the North,
Yeah.
I think they'd do what Frederick Douglass wanted to do, and they'd stay and fight either way, because as for liberty, there's no stronger desire than to feel liberated.
Right.
Because when you're liberated, you're able to do all these other things, and you're able to do what you truly want to do. So I feel like no matter what, the black community in the South, they would have always ended up being liberated.
Right. So what you said first is if they didn't know about the South, the North, they would have stayed in the South and fought because they wouldn't have had any other choice, right? And the fact that they had information about the North, it gave them other choices, right? So the education in itself provides people with different choices, right? Yeah.
Just to go back to what Brian was saying, I feel like, I lost my train of thought, that the media sometimes romanticizes what America is, and therefore makes it seem like it's the most incredible thing ever, and therefore for black people at that time would have thought about anything. They, like someone mentioned, it would have been gold paved, like golden roads, or something like that. It would have been like a dream, and that's what they did. That's what the media does. They make it seem like a dream, like it is a dream. And I think that's kind of disappointing in a way, because I don't think that if they knew 100% what it was, a lot of people, 100% of people who went would have gone.
So last question here, folks. Would you recommend this book to anybody?
Yes.
Who would recommend it to somebody else? Why? Why would you recommend this book to somebody?
Well, it's really just a line over here of why I would recommend it. Let me just read it really quick. It's on page 261. The general laws of migration hold that the greater the obstacles and the farther the distance traveled, the more ambitious the migrants. So it's really just, it's the journey in a way. It's how you get there, what you learn along the way, all this knowledge you accumulate to like face where you're going to reach this end goal. It's like, I would recommend this book because everyone has to go through struggles to get to what they're actually dreaming of, what they want to do. And a lot of people don't realize that through the struggle is how you become that person that you want to be. It's not through being like already there. You have to go through that. Like, that struggle is the learning, but people take that struggle as like the obstacle that they'll never go through. Like, they'll never beat it because they feel like inferior. They don't feel like they have what other people have. They feel like other people got like a manual at birth on how to reach that, and they have like they just have like the instructions of how to get there. But everyone has that. They just have to go through the struggles. They're not like obstacles that you can't break through. Anyone can break through them, I believe. And that's really the message.
Yep.
There are actually two types of people I would recommend this book to. Number one, being any open-minded person, because like reading this book will really open your eyes about stuff that didn't really know that existed. Because I had heard about the Great Migration, but I didn't know how much actually went into it. And it really opened my eyes to see what people really go through to get to America, thinking it's a better place. And honestly, another type of person I would recommend it to, my future kids, simply because if I can't teach them, I would prefer them read it in a book about what life really is. And life isn't easy, no matter where you come from or where you're going, that you're gonna have to go through a lot to get what you want.
I would honestly recommend this book to anybody, mostly because it teaches us about things that we don't see, and it keeps us aware and open-minded, because in this day and age of censoring books, banning books in school, like for example, there's a book down south that they're not allowing children to read about called Mouse, about Holocaust survivors. Like, in this day and age of censoring, like, a lot of people aren't going to be allowed to have access to important information. The more you hide about traumatic events, the more you backtrack and you start acting that way. So in Germany, children are taught to treat Jewish people with respect because of what happened, and a lot of information is accessible, so they don't do things that Nazi people did in the 1940s. If you expose people to events like this, you open up a sense of sympathy instead of judging people. Just like in the Black Lives Matter, like, oh, black people are ghetto, they're shoplifters, they're thugs. Instead of, the more access you have to this information, the more you understand why people are revolting or why they're acting this way. It just keeps you open-minded, and it teaches you not to go back to ways where you mistreat people, but instead treating them to be equal and to understand what they're going through and why they do certain things the way they do it.
I think something else is just, I would recommend to anyone who really likes history, because every time we learn about history, we learn it because we don't want people to repeat it. And this is something that we should learn, something that I think should be in the curriculum because of how important it is, even though it's really long. I feel like it gives in depth about what it really is and what the migration is for so many people, and as well as it's just really interesting. I found myself really, I like the book, and I feel like so many people would have liked it. Even really, I would recommend it to anybody who really likes books, who really enjoys reading something that is realistic and is truthful about the stories about people and about Black trauma. So, yeah.
Anybody else, any last thing they want to say? Go ahead.
I wanted to touch on the topic of censorship that she brought up, because it's really important, not to censor people. I believe in no censorship at all. And I don't know. I wrote a paper a while ago about comparing Iceland and China and their ideas on censorship. Right. Because by this year, 2022, Iceland has they want at least 99% of their population to have access to free roam open internet. So because they know the internet, knowledge is power. That through giving people access to that, it will make people more knowledgeable. Because censorship doesn't do anything but control a population. China's very like they want control. Like the more you limit people's access to knowledge, the more you limit them. You're not really like limiting the knowledge. You're not really protecting them in a way. I don't feel censorship protects anyone except for the people where the truth will hurt them. And I just like I don't know. It's just that you can't take away this knowledge from people. It's the only thing that does is give more like create this what happened?
More power.
Yeah. The only thing this creates is more of a power dynamic. It keeps the people on top and the people already on the bottom. It's something they can't break free from without this knowledge.
Go ahead. You're gonna close us out.
Yeah.
Say something. We got it.
I have a class called Teacher Education, and we
It's called what?
Teacher Education.
Oh, okay.
And I had a presentation to do, and it was about critical race theory. And it was about censorship and about how they, in some states, there are bans against some of the topics that, like, this book would probably be banned in some states because of what it's talking about, because it, quote unquote, causes a hatred for this country. And although I find, and like so be it, I think, like if this book causes people to dislike the country and sees the reality of what it is, like let them do that, let them form their opinions. What Brian was saying, like power gives people knowledge, and we have to let them gain that. And right now we can see how society has this kind of embedded racism in it. And that's kind of what critical race theory is actually talking about like the embedment of racism and statistical racism, which was Black Lives Matter was talking about, and how it is systematic. And I feel like this book also talks about the racism in the government, in the government and in everything, schools, stuff like that. So.
Good stuff. My family is actually from the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina. That's where we wound up. Where we're from is obviously somewhere in Africa, but we wound up in the Carolinas. We migrated up here in a second migration. You know, this book talks about the migration in one giant swoop, right? There were actually 2 times, and both were centered around war. And maybe you can think about when we get out of here why people began to migrate to these places during times of war, right? The First World War, the Second World War, people left. A lot of people came to Newark. And why they came to Newark during the Second World War. My family came to Newark during the Second World War. War was going on, we got a port, think about all that stuff. I'm not gonna tell you all this, something you can think about later. We wound up here. They got on a train and the conductor said Newark. My family thought they were saying New York. And they got off the train here. And we've been stuck here ever since. Because they thought they were in New York. But at the end of the day, you know, that this whole story is the story of my life and a whole bunch of other people's lives, and I wouldn't be in Newark if my ancestors didn't flee the South, right? So I would not have, you would not have met me, I would not have a relationship with you, I would not be the mayor, all these other things, and if your families didn't leave when they left, you wouldn't be here. So we wouldn't have this opportunity to have this intercourse with one another, this discussion, right? And so it's important for us to look, to understand that and look at that. And I really wish I could take some of you with me to some of these places that are banning, like you said, you know, because while we're discussing this, it's almost rebellious to have these discussions, even in New Jersey, with these books. So hold on to it, read it, even when the mayor's not here doing the book club. You guys can talk about the book amongst yourselves and you know, help other people understand not only the travel from black people from the South to the North, but the interrelatedness of our travels to a place trying to find a better life and a better world, and how we actually make that better world a reality for all of us. But that's all I have. I gotta go, man. You know, I got another meeting to go to, but I love this. Y'all made my day. So thank you, Eastside in the house. All right. Y'all gotta invite me back, man. Yeah, definitely.
I
I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank Principal Dr. Santos. Let's give a round of applause for him. Thank you for your leadership in the school, and thank you. I want to thank all you young people for your thoughtful, insightful discussion every time we go on a tour with the mayor. I am just so impressed with the work because, as I already know this, the young people are brilliant and we get to showcase it. So thank you so much for saying yes. And I also want to thank Mayor Raquel. Let's give it up for our mayor. Thank you for your love of young people, and I just want to say he left some gifts for you guys, and just continue to do the reading. The book is powerful. We're all reading it together. Actually, everybody's reading it across New York. So you're going to see it in a lot of places. So make sure you continue the discussion, and thank you for your insightfulness.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
We got to put them together with our time and science time and all the other kids.